Hi, welcome to the shop. Today's topic are dividers, compasses, and calipers. Why are there so many? What do the different shapes do? A little bit of the history of them. And what I'm going to show you today, while it looks like a large collection of them, it still doesn't cover maybe a fourth of the different types that there are and the different purposes that they were made for. But we're just going to cover a few of them that I have and tell you a little bit about the ones that I don't. Anyway, welcome to the shop, and let's get started. I have a wide array of them laid out, but I have also a lot of notes because I had to do a little research because I really didn't know a lot about the true history of them. The reason for this video came out because I received some more spring dividers and calipers, and I decided that I should do a little talk about them. These were known all the way back till around 1245. Dividers were mentioned, and Leonardo da Vinci in his day had come up with some improvements on these wing dividers. One such improvement was called the knuckle joint hinge, and that tightened the hinge so it was it stayed together where you set it better. He also came up with the proportional dividers, which I do not own a set of. I wish I did. I need to find a set. But basically what they did was they had a fixed center point where their pivot was, and that pivot would give you a specific proportion that you wanted to adjust something to. So you could measure something that was 3 inches, and you could set it so 3 inches is 1 inch, and so whatever you measured off of one drawing, you could transfer to that proportion or ratio on another drawing. A simple but important invention, and used quite a bit. Now, the compass is generally a straight-legged animal with, in any of these cases, you have, in all of them, you have 2 legs and a joint at the top. Some of the calipers are not hinged calipers. There are different types, and we'll go into those. Those are more caliper gauges. They're for measuring directly off of something. A lot of times these were used by architects and things to copy measurements from one drawing to another, or to make sure that, like I say, the proportions stay the same. So we'll go over a few of these, and I'll try to explain them. But again, as I said, these are not all of them. Let's start with a funny one. This is a wooden one that I got, and you can see it's hinged with a peg, and they're in the shape of a woman or a man's legs, mahogany, and you can use them just like any divider. You can measure something with that, and then transfer it to something else. I got these because I thought they were kind of fun and funky. So that's basically what they are. Now, calipers are generally round legs, and they come from, the word comes from caliber, or the size of an opening or hole, and it's been kind of changed over the years to be caliper, and that's what these are considered. So we have different ones here. So as I said, the calipers generally have the round legs, and the dividers have straight legs. And then a compass works on the same principle, but generally they have a wooden post that you can put in them, and therefore be able to draw a circle. But there are compasses that are just 2 steel legs without the wooden one, and it's still a compass or a divider. Sort of interchangeable, those words, and you can draw an arc with those as well by scratching into it instead of using a pencil. These big ones here by Bridge City Toolworks, you can remove this steel pin here, and you can replace it with a pencil so you can use it as a compass. The interesting design feature in this one here is that you can pivot these points down, and since they pivot, you can then use it in, let me not lose that pin. I'll open the right one here. And then you can use it this way, down. And you can open this up so that it almost becomes like a bar compass, and you can use it to scribe lines that way. It's really quite a nice design feature that they came up with on this compass divider / divider. So we have a fair assortment here for you to look at, and like I said, generally the calipers have the curved legs. These are all calipers here. These are dividers with the straight legs, because you can use them to divide up distances. And these are straight legs, so these are all dividers, but this one is also a caliper with this bent leg. And this is considered a Jenny leg, or an odd leg, where one of them is bent a little different than the other one. Now, these ones look like basic dividers, and they're fairly straight legs, but they're not. If you see here, this has a bent leg. So this is a caliper or a scribe. Now, the reason I say a scribe is because if you look in closely here, this is a loosening joint here, and you can take this and you can turn it out, or you can turn it in. And if you turn it out and you tighten this back up, you can run this against one thing, a pattern or a wall or something like that, something you're scribing to, and then you can take this point here and you can scribe onto whatever material you're doing. But I want you to notice that this point is extremely fine, and if you were using it as a scribe, you would not have to put a lot of pressure on it to scribe a line. And so these I would naturally call a scribe first. These are also calipers, but they're of a little thickness here. You see the size of those. These two calipers look very similar to the ones that are on the table below, but the difference is that the base of them gets wider at the bottom, you see, here, whereas the others stay flat. And so these can do things that the others can't. When you have just a point and a point, if you're doing cylinder work, it's very difficult to get that point on it without it falling off the cylinder. But whereas these can take an outside diameter on a cylinder because they want to sit naturally on the top of it without having to slip off easily. So these will also have separate uses than those other ones. And so that's why when I talk about the different uses, you have to kind of think in terms of what it is that you need to do and try them out for that use and see how they work, because this other people have come up with the same issues you have, and they've come up with inventions that solve those problems. So these calipers may be useful also for other uses besides that, but that's when I tend to use the wider ones, is when I'm doing cylinder work. Which ones you choose to use really depends on the work you're doing. So dividers, straight legs, a Jenny leg here with this curve here. This is an architect's dividers here. Dividers, straight legs, calipers with the bent legs, caliper, bent legs. So as you go through, these are the differences of them, but there are other differences in them. These are that knuckle joint that I talked about, where they're just tightened, self-tightened by being so tight themselves. They hold to where you want them to go. This is a classic knuckle joint, and this is just peened over here. You can see, and it creates a nice, tight, snug little joint, and you open it and it stays there. But this one here is also a similar knuckle joint, but rather than being a riveted through, this one has a screw that goes through to tighten it, and then you can adjust how tight it is. And once somebody had it nice and snug, it looks like they peened this over and made it nice and tight there so it couldn't come free. There are other ones that are also a knuckle joint, But what they have is they have a nut shape here. And so the screw goes through, and this is a domed nut here on this side, and you can tighten and loosen these a little bit. So if they're too snug on you or not snug enough, you can still adjust them, whereas those other ones you can't. And again, this one here has an adjustable leg on it here. And if you want to use it as an outside caliper, you just pivot it around like that. And now you can use this side against something and this side to scribe it. These ones have a wing, or like in this one here, these calipers, this is considered the wing, and here are the legs, and you loosen this, and you can open and close that, and then when you get to what you want, you close that down. But what this also has is this micro adjustment. So there's a screw thread that comes through here, and there's this little part here that will micro adjust. So if you say move this close to a 3-inch opening that you want, then you can tighten it down with the points just by moving this one in and out a little bit, and it would micro adjust this down to give you a more exact distance. So we talked about the differences in the straight legs and the curved legs and things like that, and you can see examples of different kinds of micro adjustments, as in this one that I showed you here with this part here, allowing you to do a little micro adjust in there. But these also have micro adjustments. This one here, you can see, has this plate on it here. So this is your open adjustment, and then this is a micro adjustment that will adjust this just that little bit that you want in order to open and close these. This one here is an interesting one because, as you can see, it has a bent leg on this one here and a straight leg on this one, and this one can adjust in and out. Now, the nice thing about this is that you can use this as a scribe if you were, say, going up against a wall, fitting a cabinet to a wall, and you want to scribe the edge of it. What you can do is by moving this one this way, now this can rub against the wall, and this would give you a scribe point on the cabinet that you're going to follow as you go up and down and change the curve of it. And you can adjust this in and out, because if you were putting a piece of wood against something else that you wanted to scribe, you could move this out and in and adjust therefore for the height of the piece that you're dealing with. So this is a handy one, and you can see you can do it the other way, and you could scribe on the edge of a board. You could put this on the edge of a board and use this to scribe on top of it. Run this up a little bit. This one here would follow the edge, and this would give you the scribe. A different use than some of the other ones. So, now, this is that micro adjustment, and I wanted to explain how it works. Everything pivots off of here, as you can see, and this has a secondary plate that's attached to this one. And down here, there is a little bump, a little raised area right there. And the shape of this piece that goes in is conical. So when you go down in here and you screw it in and you push it, it pushes this out. And that's makes for the micro adjustment. And it will bring this point in here tighter the more I turn it in. It's just moving it just the slightest bit. And so that is the micro adjuster on these. Whereas this type on the winged compass or caliper, this one here has the wing, and it has the rod going through here and a spring here. And that spring is pressed up against this portion of the wing. And when you tighten this up, it allows that spring to come in closer, which then tightens up these 2 points down here. So that's just two of the micro adjusters on some of these. Now, these are what I call caliper gauges. These are just calipers, but these are caliper gauges. And the way they work is they have a sliding head here that goes in and out. You can adjust it in and out. And this is what I call using this. You would use this to actually measure off something for a thickness. This would give you an outside diameter of something. And if you were doing something that had you wanted to measure the inside of, you can put these inside like that and measure the inside of it. And you can get the measurements for the inside and the outside right here. You see here it says out and here it says in. So if you're measuring this, then you use this one. And if you're measuring this, then you would use this measurement here on this rule that moves in and out. This is a Stanley wooden one with a caliper and a little rule on this side here. But generally this main purpose is this caliper. And again, it's what I call a caliper gauge. It's even on these smaller rulers. You can see here that this one is a small ruler that opens up, and here you have the caliper, and it goes in and out, slides in and out like that, and this can fold up and close up, and then you can keep that in your pocket. And then here's another one, same thing, that you can use this caliper gauge on, and you can open and close it, get this out of your way, or use it fully here. This one does not have the inside and the outside, so this would just be measuring the outside of something. This one here is an interesting one. This is German silver, and this is patented in 1907. And it's interesting because it also gives you a protractor. There's a protractor here, so that'll give you your angles if you want. And then if you close this up like this, here you have a caliper gauge. So caliper gauges, calipers. And there are plenty more of these type of things here. Here's another small Stanley one, a larger one, another one there. And then there are caliper gauges that are all steel instead of not just the wooden ones. These are caliper gauges, inside and outside dimensions. This tightens it on the ruler, and then you can use this to open and close it as you do your measurement. So if you're doing an inside dimension, or if you're doing an outside dimension, and then you would read off your markings off the ruler there. So this is a caliper gauge. This is a little different. This is another one. And the way it works is that you have your outside dimension here. So you would loosen this, and then you can open and close this to get your outer dimension. And up here, it has the alternating interior dimension. Again, a caliper gauge. It also includes, in this one, a depth gauge here, because the part that slides through attached to this just comes in and out depending on the depth that you want to measure. This is I believe it's a, let's see, an MSB German brand. I thought it was Dietzen, but Western Zone, so just after the war. So there's that one. And then there is another one here, which has this gauge on it. And so this one works the same way, except you can take your reading off the dial here as to the interior, the exterior, and again, a depth gauge. And now, while this is very handy, they make digital ones, so that'll give you a digital readout here as to what those dimensions are. So those are all the caliper gauges, which I'm not really putting into this whole sort of thing between compasses and dividers and calipers. So you've got these calipers here that have this large arch to them, and the micro adjustments here, same as those large arch ones. And these come much larger. You can get these in with 18, 20-inch legs and even more. You can find them all the time. So all of these all have bent legs and all are calipers. The thing about these that are nicer in timber, they use them to measure large logs on the larger ones. And the thing about these is this is going to give you an outside dimension, and on almost any of these that we're talking about, even if they're just bent legs down here, if you push them through, they can now measure an interior. But you don't use these ones that have this long curve too much for that. But here, for instance, you have a simple set here, and this would give you your interior dimension of what you want. But if you take it and you turn it this way, just pull it a little further, now it's going to give you your outer dimension. So these are called inside-outside calipers, and caliper, again, because it's got a bent leg here, and they serve the purpose of doing inside and outside. There's some of these that they've done in fancy, they're called women's legs, and they have a little shoe, some of them shoes, some are barefoot, and a little more shapely, and those are very collectible. A lot of people like to collect those. And then this is a dual one, because this has a straight scribe here and here, but it has a caliper here. So dividers and calipers, and depending on how you turn them, you can adjust them to whatever it is that you want to measure, outside, inside, or use them as dividers to divide up distances and transfer them to something else. Oftentimes, dividers are used if you're doing dovetails and you want to set the distances the same. You can take and use dividers easily off of one point. You transfer, and then you transfer to the other one, and you can that way incrementally make them the same on the piece that you're working on. So those are dividers. And this is called a ratcheting mechanism on this one here. You see, this is a little different than most of those as far as the adjustment. You can loosen here to micro adjust, and you can push this up, and they're sprung, so you move it to approximately where you want it, and then you can tighten this leg down into it by using this point, this little screw thread here. Now, this is called a spring joint, but the spring joint here is sometimes referred to as an American joint. What it's got is a ball here that these two legs pivot on. And so there's a round piece that goes straight through, and these two will pivot on them. And the outer points here connect into this spring and spreads it apart when you pivot on this point. And so this is an interesting method of doing this rather than the knuckle joint where they're just tight and holding. But what I just got, and I think is really interesting, is, let me set these down a little tighter, are these. And this is also a spring joint, but the difference is, you see there's no pivot point. And these are spring steel, forged, super thin, and this is one piece up here, around here, and down. And they basically work on springing that part of the steel. And so you see that wants to go out, and then you adjust it in with this. These have an interesting stepped foot to them that I haven't fully figured out the use for, but you could use them inside diameter there, outside diameter there if you want, but I'm not fully sure of why this has this little step in the foot. I don't know if you can see it. I hope you can. I can do a close-up picture. But I love this idea of these, and they're really beautifully done, and hand-cut thumb screws. And the first one I had belonged to my grandfather, and this was his, and he was a draftsman, engineer, and so this was his. And you can identify also these by this line that goes up through the middle of the spring, right through there. You'll see it on the other ones. So these, you cannot transfer these. These are inside calipers only. They will only give you the dimension inside. You can't pass them by each other like on those other ones and do both. But you can buy these and you can buy these. So you have inside and outside. These are bent in, these are bent out. So that would give you that other dimension. Again, the spring steel with that line going through it there, and it's all one piece. And then another one that I just got is a smaller version, And these would really be considered dividers because you see the legs are straight line. Beautifully handsome little treatments in them that really make them stand out. And I've really been looking for these, and luckily I found 4 in an auction, a recent auction that nobody else was bidding on, and I lucked out on getting these. This is another one of the same type. And you can see the line going through the spring, the beautiful workmanship here. And these are outside dividers, or outside calipers. So I messed that up. So here are all the ones that are just that solid spring. And here are the ones that have that pivot point, sometimes called an American joint. And it's got a pivot point there. And when you squeeze it, it's pushing out on this piece of spring steel here. And this one here has a handle on the top, so you can use it as a compass and do layouts this way. Oftentimes, these steel ones like this were used on metalwork for a compass instead of a pencil on a drafting table. And this little rod here is pinned in here. There's a tiny little pin there. And it's interesting because when you find these in flea markets and stuff, you start noticing all these little differences that you don't really pay attention to when you see one set somewhere. You just kind of look at it and accept it as what it is. Now, these dividers are very fancy ones, and you can see that they have a brass head up here on the leg, and then it turns to stainless steel as it goes down the leg here. And they're very, very fine and very sharp. And these are dividers for Draftsman. And they're very exacting. And this is the knuckle joint that we talked about. So it just works on a tension. But they can't pass each other, and they don't need to. And then they have a beautiful little dimple in here, and that allows you to put your fingers in there to spread them apart as you need them. And on the drawing on the table, you could transfer the same distance over to this one, or over to this point, and use it to divide circles or to divide distances. And these are, as I say, considered dividers, but they're part of a drafting kit, which had not only these dividers, but they also had other items in them. And here is a drafting kit, complete kit, not as old as that one. This one's made by Dietzen, a German company that made very fine drafting tools. And in here, you can see the different things that they offer in this. This is a compass with a centering rod. So this one works on the basis of having this rod go through it. And when you turn this, both of them, since they have different threads, will either spread apart or come together. Here's a different hinge part here on this one here. And these are also dividers, but you can release this pin and replace it with lead. These are little pieces of lead here for drawing. This here is a bar compass, and this piece here will join the 2 bars so you can extend it, and these will move them in and out. And you can change these points as well as some of these other points for these pieces down here. And here's a larger one. I can show you what it does. It's called an inker, and what it does is it has 2 parts to it, and there's a separation where the 2 points come together. And what you would do is you would open and close this screw to make this gap wider or thinner, and that would be the thickness of the line that you apply the ink at. And a lot of drafting years ago was done first in pencil, and then they would have an inker, a separate inker, that would come over and use these tools to draw the lines over in ink rather than pencil so they wouldn't smudge. And so that's what these are. If you ever find this kit and you see these little pieces in there, that's what these are for. There you can hopefully see that you can adjust the gap of that. So these are drafting kits, and you find them a lot in flea markets now. And some are complete and some aren't, but they serve good purposes, and you can use them for woodworking and other things.
you can transfer the lines onto wood and things like that. So they're handy kits to have, and this is what I learned to use when I was in school learning to draft. There is a book that I reference oftentimes by R.A. Salomon, The Dictionary of Woodworking Tools, and that's where I get a lot of the information that I do on these tools that I have. And in here, I just wanted to show you that under calipers, there are all these different types. Coach hood, double calipers, double end calipers, and this one here is a double caliper. This is a straight caliper. All of these different ones you can find, and you can use this book to see what they are. Here's a dancing calipers, wonderful little piece. And these are the different types of joints, the wing nut. But just to show you how many there are, I just wanted to go through and show you this book. Here's more dancing legs, and these are the proportional calipers here, or dividers. So an excellent book to have as well.
So these are just a few of the types of compasses that there are. The differences in the joints, whether it's a spring joint or whether it's a knuckle joint, or the American spring joint with the round hoop. So you have the differences in the joints. Then you have the differences in the legs, whether they're curved this way or whether they're curved out. And then the differences with the knuckle joints, where you can pass the two legs by each other and create an inside and an outside joint. All these different things, the caliper gauges and all these different tools that I've shown you, is just an introduction to calipers and compasses and dividers. I suggest you, whenever you see them at a flea market or if you see them in a Starrett catalog, read about them and see what they're used for and what they're called. The names can vary, but the uses are fairly specific. At any rate, thanks for coming to the shop and letting me share with you some of the collection that I have and the uses for them. And I always enjoy having you here. And I hope you'll come back and subscribe. And take care of yourselves and stay well and take care of each other. Take care. Bye.